Hey, what's going on guys? H3 Music here, and in today's video I'm going to be breaking down how I produced Justin Stone's Locations. This is originally a free-for-profit beat I put on my website and all called Never Change. You can still go access it, download it if you're an artist, and use it as you want, so definitely go check that out. But we're just going to break it down now and see all the parts that built it. So first thing we're going to do is check out the piano. For this beat I used Keyscape. I use Keyscape for most of my beats. It's just a soft grand piano. Doesn't look like anything crazy is being done to it. Let me see if there's any effects. Just some reverb and some EQing on the piano. I cut off most of the low end and most of the high end, so it's very muffled, kind of telephony, I guess you could say. When it comes to the harmony, it's kind of weird thinking about these as chords. It's more of just a riff or an idea. You could probably call it the James Bond riff or idea. The first chord is for sure B flat minor, the second chord is for sure G flat minor, but this is a pretty weird chord where you, instead of going up to the normal A flat in a normal minor progression, it goes to just G, which gives it that James Bond kind of sound. That's the same riff that is used in that and a lot of other songs. There's a bunch of alternative rock songs that use this sort of movement, but if it was in just a normal minor progression, it would sound more like this. Which, hearing it now, sounds absolutely god-awful. I do not like that at all. It's just so used to the way I originally did it with the just G instead of A flat. But that is the only weird thing about this. Otherwise, that sort of back and forth idea I use all the time, especially back when I made this, and the bass notes are just the notes of the chord or the main idea that's being played. So that's the piano idea. It's nothing crazy from a technical standpoint, but from a harmonic standpoint it is a little different and not something you usually run into. I think this was also an NF type beat, so it's very out there for an NF type beat. So the other thing I want to mention is the adjustments in velocity. This changes the dynamics of each note, and I do have it slowly decay over time, so there are notes you would consider more syncopated, such as this loud one that's on the offbeat, and some other ones along the way. That's just to give it a little life, make it move a little bit. The next thing I added after the piano would have been this Moog Bass. All what this is I went into Harmor. Let's see here. Harmor, I opened up just the default patch. I gave it some unison to adjust the width of the sound, so the normal sound sounds something more like this, which is terrifying. I added unison to it to give it some width. I lowered it by 2 octaves here. And then I got rid of that ugly top end of the wave by pulling this down over here. And I added a little bit more sub over here. That's a pretty basic Moog bass. You can get really crazy with it, and I usually always do those sorts of sounds in Harmor just to make it straightforward and simple. But these notes just follow the notes of the chords that I've got. So first one's B flat, second one is G flat, third one is E flat, and back to G flat, and then down to B flat. So those two together sound a little something like this. Next, what I would have done is the kick and the snare. I've talked about kicks and snares before. When it comes to kicks, I have no clue how to describe what I do. It's all by ear. The only thing I highly suggest is that you have a kick hit every time a chord changes. So my chords change every bar, so I've got a new kick every bar. I do that just to make it clear that the chord has changed and give it some emphasis every time the chord does change. So if you play the kick with the bass, it sounds something like this. And then there we go. There we go. There we go. Those were just when the chords changed. Snares, since this is a lower BPM, 100 or under, I usually always do snares and claps on the 2 and the 4. If this was a faster tempo, I'd say over 120, then for sure I would be putting them on the 3 of every bar. And this is super standard. If you're not putting stuff on the 2 or the 4 or on the 3 on faster tempos, you are kind of breaking the mold most of the time, not in a good way. So I highly suggest you keep them either on the 2 and the 4 in a slower tempo or on the 3 on faster tempos. So those together sound like this with the piano, bass, snare, and kick. At the time, I was pretty obsessed with Kyle Beats' packs, so the Lima kick, the Feds clap, all these came from his Kingdom drum kit, I believe. The other thing that came from the Kingdom drum kit is the hi-hat, which is the lost one. When it comes to hi-hats, I'm super straightforward. I autofill actually through right-clicking on the hi-hat and then choosing fill each 2 steps. So I just filled all of that in and then went in and individually put where I want little fills or little graces sort of when it comes to the hi-hat. And this beat really doesn't have any fills per se, just these little grace notes to give it a little step, a little swag in its step. The only fill is really this one here. The next major aspect to this beat, and probably the most important aspect, is all of these sort of vocal melodies that are playing throughout it. The first one actually is from NF's Y, that shout that's in it. You'll hear it here. So that noise that happens at the end of NF's Y, I sampled and shoved it into here, so when this is the only vocal Vox chant thing playing, you hear it like this. I really love that. It's so subtle, and that's not the one most people hear, but that's in the background there. The one that most people do hear is the one from the Exhale plugin, so that's this one here. And let me bring up Exhale here. Exhale is the plugin that Tommy Prophet uses for a lot of NF's vocal things. I use it a ton for vocal things. It is the go-to for vocal sound effects, sort of the chants, voxy kind of things. This is the under loops. It's Weird York. And I put it into B flat minor because that is the scale I'm playing in, except for that one chord, but that one chord doesn't interfere with this because of the notes it's playing. And I really didn't mess with this at all. The one thing I did do is reverse it. The original sounds like this, which a lot of people may recognize as one that's it's some Lecrae song. That one you might recognize it from. It's been in a lot of songs, even ones that I've done, so. But all I did was reverse it, and that kind of adds to that kind of weird vibe that the Y chant also gives. Both of them kind of add to each other. The only other thing is I did have a yell kind of chant that hits at the beginning of each bar. I can't find it for some reason, but there is one of those in there. It's pretty standard, and I don't believe I messed with it at all. So all of it together sounds like this. Alrighty, so those are all the instruments. There's nothing crazy when it comes to the mixing. The only weird thing was that kind of telephone, radio, EQing I put on the piano. The kick does have sound goodizer on it. Please don't put sound goodizer on stuff. I now usually don't put anything on my kicks. I just adjust the volume of them. That would be probably the one thing I do differently. This is how I limit. I add some saturation, I increase the ceiling and the gain. The only thing I do differently now that I didn't do back when I made this beat is I now lower the attack envelopes, the release envelopes, and the sustain envelopes just to make stuff that hits quickly hit a little harder. So I do that now. I didn't add anything to the bass. Mostly everything else is just reverb on stuff, and it looks like I did a little bit of EQing on that Y chant. I just removed the bomb end so it wasn't all muddy. But when it comes to arranging stuff, it's pretty standard. I didn't do any weird cuts or anything for the first like, I don't know, 32 bars. At this point, I did do a half a bar break in between what I would consider the verse and the chorus. So that's this here. 1, 2, and then it starts there. So those two breaks, that I got from NF, How Could You Leave Us? He does that between his verses and choruses in that song. This is a little different context, but it's the same sort of idea where you put a little bit of a break between the chorus and the verse and the verse and the chorus. I did it at the end of the chorus as well here. For the bridge, I did pull back a ton of the instruments. All that's left is that exhale plug-in chant thing and the Moog Bass. I've mentioned it before, but I want to mention it again. When it comes to making beats, it's all about tension and release. That's it harmonically, that's also it rhythmically. And in this instance, the tension and release at this portion comes from the removal of stuff. So when you remove instruments, it actually causes a ton of tension, and then the release is when all the instruments come back. So I've mentioned it before, but if you're having trouble trying to get something to feel big, try pulling stuff out, and that may actually be what your problem is, not adding more stuff. So just keep that in mind when it comes to producing. And yeah, there's no fancy cuts anywhere in here, and just ends with the piano, and that's really it. That's how I produce Justin Stone's Locations. I hope you guys enjoy. Let me know what beats you want me to break down. I'll be happy to break some more down for you guys. And like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good one.